The Prime Minister is at the ASEAN summit in Bangkok. One of the big issues is the prospect of a free trade agreement which will cover basically half the world's population, including, importantly, China and India potentially. I spoke to trade expert Shiro Armstrong from the ANU about the significance of that trade deal.
It is a big deal. It's half of the global population. It's 30 to 40% of global GDP, depending on how you measure it. How likely is it to get done? Well, we'll see tonight. Basically, it's all but done, from what I understand. It's just that India has yet to sign on. So it requires Prime Minister Modi to take a big step and show some political leadership, bite the bullet, and make the commitment to join the agreement.
Given the wave of protectionism that we've seen from Brexit to Donald Trump, how significant would this step be in terms of a step forward on free trade?
Yeah, very significant. So markets are closing up, as you mentioned, in the United States, parts of Europe, and the US-China trade war, bringing huge uncertainty to the global economy. So it's in this context that the leaders understand, not just keeping markets open in our region, in Asia, it's about making further openings in these markets, committing countries to rules, so new rules where none existed before, for Indonesia, India, China, importantly. It'll bring some certainty to the global economy, much needed certainty.
It's quite an interesting contrast, though, isn't it? Not just in terms of the free trade versus protectionism, but also in terms of the geopolitical challenges, I guess, between our alliance, our ally with the United States, who is, Donald Trump and putting up trade barriers, and yet the nation where we have a fair bit of tension right now, also important in economic terms, but we're seeking a closer economic engagement with China through this.
We are. China's our largest economic partner by far. It's in our interest, it's in their interest to have them enmeshed in more rules, open their markets further, and they have a big stake in the current global economic system, bigger than most other countries. So they're willing to make commitments like this. I think that's our top priority, to lock them into commitments, lock other countries into commitments together, so we can make progress on the China-Japan arrangements, the relationship, China-India relationship. This part of the world is where the dynamism is, the economic dynamism, and we want to maintain that. And this is where growth will come from. So it's important to lock in these market openings.
Does it show that China, and the Prime Minister met with Premier Li Keqiang last night in Bangkok, and the noises were all quite good out of that particular meeting, but in terms of that relationship, does it show that China is pragmatic about the economic relationship, that even when there's been a bit of megaphone diplomacy, some of our politicians criticising them, they're still willing to get on with the economic relationship? Is that a fair assessment?
I think that's a fair assessment. They're pragmatic when it suits them, of course, yet this is, have to remember, within a regional context. So this RCEP agreement is not China-led, it's ASEAN-led. And in fact, Indonesia's key in all of this. So it's a nice framework for us to make progress with the China relationship and with other countries too. The Chinese have traditionally found it easy to manage political relationships by strengthening economic relationships. And I think that's in our interest. As I said, they want to further the economic relationship. Well, it's good to lock in rules and market openings around that.
Would China see this as an opportunity to fill the vacuum or the void on leadership when it comes to free trade that's been left by Donald Trump not enacting the Trans-Pacific Partnership and so on, which was the US-centred free trade agreement, which we signed, hoped the US would be on board, they're not. Is this a chance for the Chinese to fill that void in a leadership sense?
It is, but there's only a certain type of Chinese leadership, I think, that Australia and the rest of the world is ready to swallow. So Chinese hegemonic leadership, I don't think is anything that we want a part of, and Chinese dominance is not something that we can allow. Yet Chinese leadership in the trade sense of China committing to rules, China opening up its market further, is something that is most welcome, I think, by us and the rest of the region. And a big example of that is through the US-China trade war. China's been raising tariffs against the United States in retaliation, yet it's been reducing tariffs and trade barriers to the rest of the world, So it's actually increased its importance with the rest of the world while it's engaged in this damaging trade war with the United States.
And finally, the other big giant in the region, India. This is the sticking point because India traditionally has been not an open economy.
No.
What sign is there that they will compromise at this point? Because the Indian leader Narendra Modi is under pressure at home not to ratify this particular deal.
Correct, yeah. There's a lot of pressure domestically in India, but from what I understand, most of the agreement's done. India has got cold feet at the very end with a whole host of new issues being reopened by the Indian negotiators. And so it's up to Prime Minister Modi to take that leadership step and really commit to this. And this is a way forward for India out of its current slowing economy. It's having some trouble domestically, and this is a way for it to engage in the East Asian value chains, join the global economy more fulsomely, and become a real economic powerhouse. This will lift India's growth potential.
And if they do get on board, what's the timeline to have it finalised?
So they're talking about February for finishing the legal scrub and doing what you have to do with these agreements and having it come into force later next year. So that'll be a huge boost to global certainty, trade certainty, and our growth prospects. So we hope we can get it done, that they can get it done in Bangkok. If India doesn't come on board, looks like they'll unfortunately proceed without India at this stage and find ways to bring India abroad later on.
It's better to have something than nothing. I guess that's the view.
To an extent, but we need something that's credible and something that has the right framework for deepening that cooperation going forward. Just signing these for the sake of signing them as political trophies is not just a waste of time, but you'll get a backlash eventually. It's important to make strong commitments, particularly at this point of time when there's so much uncertainty.
Dr Shiro Armstrong, as always, appreciate your time and insights from the ANU. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Kieran.